Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're digging into one of the most important, most misunderstood, and most heavily debated topics in archery elk hunting: where to shoot an elk. Now listen, I know this gets talked about a lot. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's talking on forums and they're full of diagrams. Social media lights up every time someone posts a kill shot. But when you've been bow hunting elk for over 3 decades like I have, when you've watched arrows connect, watched elk react, and watched things go both right and wrong, you learn real quick that this conversation isn't just theory. It's life or death. It's blood trails or heartbreak, and it matters. So today, we're going to break it all down, not just from a diagram, but from the mountain, from real hunts, real anatomy, and real results. We're going to talk about the best shot angles, the ones to avoid, the shots that look good but aren't, and how to adapt when you're above, below, or right in line with a bull in tight timber. This isn't about bravado. It's about ethical kills, clean hits, and making the best decision when your heart's racing, your lungs are burning, and that bull finally steps into your window. Let's get into it. Before we talk about where to shoot, let's start with something too many bow hunters skip over: the anatomy of an elk. This animal is not a deer, it's not a hog, and it's not a 3D foam target with cutaway vitals. Elk are massive, heavily muscled animals with thick hides, rib coverage, and layers of protection around their lungs and heart. And if you're going to be effective and ethical with your shots, you need to understand what's really inside the body. The lungs and heart of an elk do make up a pretty darn big target, roughly the size of a volleyball stacked on a dinner plate. But here's the mistake a lot of hunters make. They assume that's just hitting the general area. Hitting that general area is enough, and it's not. You've got to hit the center of the vitals, not just somewhere in the chest cavity. Because if you catch the top of the lungs, the very back of one lung, or skim the bottom with no heart contact, you might not recover that bull, especially in steep terrain or when blood trails dry up fast. The lungs sit just behind the front shoulder and slightly higher than most people think. The heart is tucked low and forward, right behind the elbow, deep in the chest, and both are protected by ribs, heavy muscle, and in some bulls over 700 pounds of mass. If your arrow doesn't penetrate well or you misjudge angle by even a few inches, that bull can be gone before you even know what happened. Let's clear something up. The elk shoulder blade is often blamed for deflecting arrows or ruining penetration. But in reality, it's not the scapula itself that ruins your shot. It's hitting too far forward into the heavy ball and socket joint of the leg bone. The scapula is thin and angled, and most broadheads can cut through it. But the leg bone underneath, that's where your shot dies. That's where you lose penetration, fail to reach the vitals, and watch that bull run off with an arrow stuck in meat. So when people say, stay away from the shoulder, what they really mean is don't crowd the leg bone, not don't aim forward. Because as we'll cover next, forward shots are often necessary. You just need to understand where to place them. This is something I teach guys in person all the time. Your exit matters more than your entry. You don't just aim at a dot on the side of a bull. You visualize where the arrow needs to exit on the opposite side of the body, and then you choose an entry that makes that possible. That's what separates the average bow hunter from the lethal one. The average guy sees a broadside bull and thinks, put it right behind the shoulder. That lethal guy that sees the same bull pictures the lungs in 3D, knows the exact angle of his arrow flight, and visualizes the arrow exiting in the center of both lungs or dead through the heart. If you build that habit, entry to exit visualization, you're going to kill more bulls, lose fewer bulls, and recover cleaner, faster, and more confidently. If you asked me to choose one shot angle for a bow hunter just one, I'd pick a true broadside every time. Who wouldn't? Not because it's flashy, not because it looks best on film, but because it gives you the highest odds of punching both lungs, getting a pass through, and recovering that bull fast. A clean broadside shot gives you a full window to the vital cavity with minimal interference from bone and maximum margin for error. But don't let that fool you into thinking it's automatic. Even with this angle, shot placement still matters a lot. Here's the mistake I see all the time. Hunters aim too far back. They're afraid of the shoulder, so they drift the pin rearward, sometimes into the liver, sometimes into the guts. And they think, well, I didn't hit bone. Sure, didn't hit bone, but you didn't hit lungs either. And the difference between a 12-second recovery and 12-hour tracking job is often just 2 inches forward. I'm going to give you a simple rule that saved me on more hunts than I can count. Split the front leg vertically and aim 1/3 up from the bottom of the body. That's your pocket. That's where the lungs and top of the heart overlap. That's the golden triangle where arrows disappear and bulls go down fast. Why 1/3 up is so critical. Some guys aim for the middle of the body. Others go lower, hoping for heart. But if you go too low, you risk hitting beneath the chest cavity altogether, especially if the elk jumps at the shot. If you go too high, you risk single lung and above, which can lead to long tracking jobs and uncovered bulls. That lower third zone is your margin. It catches the double lung when the elk jumps the string, when the angle is off by a degree or two, or when your anchor slipped a bit under pressure. That's why I coach it every time. 1/3 up, straight up the leg broadside, simple, consistent, deadly. Now let's be clear. Broadside doesn't mean the elk has to be on the same elevation plane. In fact, that's rarely the case. You could be shooting uphill or downhill and still have a broadside angle. What matters is the alignment of the ribs and lungs, not necessarily the slope of the hill. If the elk's body is flat to you, no quartering, no twist, it's a broadside shot. But keep in mind, elevation does change your arrow path, right? And we'll move more into that and talk about those adjustments in segment 5. For now, we want to note that just because the elk is broadside doesn't mean it's time to shoot. You've got to look at the legs. If the bull's near leg is back, the shoulder may block part of the vitals. Wait for him to step forward with that near leg. It opens up that pocket and gives you the cleanest line through both lungs and into the heart. If you're already at full draw and that bull's frozen with the near leg back, let down if you have to. The worst mistake you can make is forcing a shot through a partially covered zone. I'd rather draw twice and wait 2 minutes than shoot once and regret it forever. One of the easiest ways to build broadside confidence is to shoot for that exact placement at every practice session, but not just from flat ground. Add pressure, add fatigue, shoot after running, shoot after holding at full draw for a full minute. Make yourself uncomfortable, because I can promise you, when a bull is screaming at 20 yards broadside in the open with your heart pounding out of your chest, it's going to feel a whole lot different than your backyard. If you can hit that spot in chaos, you can do it in the moment that matters. If there's one angle that consistently leads to devastating results when executed correctly, it's a solid quartering away shot. I'm talking about the angle where the elk is slightly turned away from you, broadside, with the back end shifted just enough that your arrow travels forward through the vitals on a long diagonal line. This shot, when handled right, is absolutely lethal. Why? Because your arrow travels through the biggest section of vital real estate available. You've got a better chance of slicing both lungs, getting to the heart, and punching out with a full pass-through that leaves an easy-to-follow blood trail. But just like with everything in bow hunting, it comes with a catch. You've got to understand where to aim. You've got to visualize where your arrow needs to come out on the other side and aim at that place. That's what makes this possible. I've had shots where I aim for what looked like nearly on the last rib, and that arrow still exited in the offside armpit. Why? because the angle was so severe. The elk was almost walking away from me and I had to thread that needle through a steep diagonal channel. That's the secret with quartering away shots. The entry point looks scary, but the internal path is gold. If you understand that, you'll start putting bulls down faster than ever before. Now there's a line here, and you've got to know when not to cross it. If the elk is more than a 45-degree angle away, and you're looking at mostly rump and back ribs, it's no longer a safe shot. You're now risking deflection, clipping the guts, and coming up short of both lungs. You're also more likely to have low blood trails and poor penetration if the arrow has to push through stomach and intestines first. So here's my rule. If you can draw a line from your entry to the offside lung or shoulder and avoid the guts, take it. If not, you should wait. Confidence in this shot comes from knowing your setup. This angle demands solid arrow flight, razor sharp broadheads, and enough kinetic energy to push through diagonally. So if you're shooting a light arrow with expandable heads and barely 60 pounds of draw weight, this might not be the angle for you. But if you've got a well-tuned fixed blade setup and you've tested it under real-world resistance, you're going to love this angle. I've recovered bulls with 40-yard quartering away shots that didn't go more than 60 yards, and the tracks look like someone dumped buckets of red paint. When done right, it's devastating. Now, how should you practice for quartering away shots? It's simple. Set your 3D target at a sharp angle and aim for an exit point. Don't just shoot the dot. Visualize the elk's offside lung. Imagine your opposite leg. Make it second nature. Practice at all ranges with different angles. Get it burned into your brain. Because the moment that bull stops, turns just right, and looks the other way, that's your window. And if you've prepared, you'll know exactly what to do. All right, let's get into the shots that spark the most debate. Quartering toward and frontal shots. Some guys love them, some won't take them no matter what. I've probably taken both. If you've seen it go right, you've probably also seen it go wrong. And what I'm going to do now is not theory, it's the real talk you only get from being in the field for decades. Let's start with the quartering toward shot. This shot might look tempting, especially when a bull walks toward you, turns just slightly, and gives you that near side shoulder angle. But here's the truth. This is a high-risk shot, especially for bow hunters. The vitals are small and protected from this angle. You've got the front leg bone, thick brisket muscle, and an oblique rib all guarding the entrance. Your window is tight, and if your arrow deflects at all, comes in light, or angles off even a few degrees, you're in trouble. Sure, there are times when a perfectly placed arrow from this angle will zip through one lung, the heart, and the offside lung and drop that bull fast. But here's what I've seen more often. Poor penetration, deflected shots, and marginal hits that make for a long, painful trail if you recover the bull at all. My rule, only take the quartering to shot if you're close, under 20 yards, you've got a razor sharp tune setup, the angle is slight and not too steep, and you've got full confidence in your ability to drive that arrow into the forward part of the lungs without clipping the shoulder. If those stars don't align, you wait. Let him take another step. Let him turn. Be disciplined. Be relentless. You only need one shot, but it has to be the right one. Now, let's talk about the frontal. This one is controversial. I know a lot of guys who refuse to take it. I also know some absolute killers who live and die by the frontal when it's presented inside 20 yards. I've taken both. I've taken this shot twice, and it killed both bulls fast. So here's where I stand. The frontal shot is deadly when it's close. The angle is perfect, and your setup is really dialed. The key is knowing exactly where to aim. A mature bull's vitals from the front are small, but they're exposed. You're aiming for the soft triangle just below the brisket, directly between the shoulders, right where the neck meets the chest. That window is the trachea, major arteries, the top of the heart, and the entry into both lungs. Hit that pocket and it's lights out in seconds. But, and this is a big one, miss even slightly and you're in no man's land of brisket, shoulder plate, or high neck muscle, none of which will kill quickly, many of which result in a non-lethal wound and a bull that lives to become call shy and nearly impossible to hunt later. Here's my personal checklist. If these aren't all true, I don't take the shot. Your distance is usually under 20 yards. The bull is standing still, head up. The angle is dead on, no tilt, no curve. Adrenaline is under control. I can hit a softball at that distance 10 out of 10 times. Complete confidence. If any one of those is off, I wait. I've passed on more frontal shots than I've taken, but the ones I've taken with full confidence, those bulls dropped in sight. That's the difference between a smart shot and a gamble. This is where discipline really shows. Late in the season, solo hunt, 5 days deep, and a bull walks in frontal at 18 yards. You're going to feel the itch to draw and send it. You're going to hear the clock ticking. But you've got to remember something. You don't get points for drawing your bow. You only get results from the right shot. Every shot you take either brings you closer to being a more effective hunter or it costs you hard-earned lessons. Be patient, know your angles, and don't let your ego or urgency talk you into something your experience wouldn't. Now, if you're bow hunting elk in the mountains, you're going to deal with elevation. That's just the reality of the game. Whether you're set up on a bench above a trail, tucked into a cliff band, or the bull is downhill feeding in a meadow, you're often shooting downhill or uphill, rarely flat. And that terrain throws a whole new challenge into the equation: steep shot angles. Let's break down what changes when the shot angle steepens, and more importantly, what doesn't. First off, let's talk about your form. A lot of bow hunters ruin their mechanics on steep angles because they adjust their arms instead of their torso. Here's what I mean. You're above a bull, and instead of bending at the waist, you keep your shooting form intact, you drop your bow arm and change your anchor alignment. That slight breakdown can cause your peep to misalign, your anchor to shift, and your arrow to sail high, or worse, miss vitals entirely and wound a bull. So here's the fix. Always bend at the waist. Keep your upper body form exactly the same as it would be on the flat. Let the adjustment happen at your core, not in your shoulders. And you've got to practice this deliberately. Every time you shoot from elevation, rehearse bending from the waist and maintaining a clean shot line with the rest of your form. Remember, your distance isn't what you think it is. This is something that still gets guys every year. You're 35 yards from a bull, but that's line of sight distance, not true horizontal distance. And unless you're ranging with an angle compensating rangefinder or doing that math yourself in your head, you're going to shoot for the wrong yardage. Let's keep it simple. Angle affects gravity. Gravity only acts on the horizontal component of your shot. So when you're shooting steeply downhill or uphill, the arrow drops less than it would on flat ground over the same distance. That means if you use a flat 35-yard pin shot on your steep downhill shot without adjusting, your arrow hits high. And with elk, hitting high often means back straps or spine, neither of which are consistent kill zones. So get an angle compensating rangefinder, or if you're old school and you can do it, learn how to do it in your head. But either way, don't just trust the straight line number. Here's something most diagrams don't show you. When you shoot at a steep angle, the size of the vital zone shrinks because your arrow isn't going through lungs side to side anymore. It's coming from above or below, passing through a thinner section of lung tissue. That means your margin for error is lower. A shot that would catch both lungs from broadside might only clip one lung from steep above. That's why steep angle shots demand even tighter precision. You need to visualize not just where the lungs are, but how your arrow is entering and exiting based on the slope. This is where that exit visualization that we talked about earlier becomes critical. You don't aim where the vitals look like they are. You aim for where your arrow needs to exit the inside of the body to pass through the most lung possible. If you're hunting elk in high country or rugged terrain, you can't afford to only shoot on level ground. So here's what I recommend. Set up a 3D target on a hillside. Shoot downhill from above, then shoot uphill from below. Get used to ranging properly. Get used to adjusting your stance. Get used to feeling the tension shift through your body and adapting without breaking form. Don't overthink it, but don't underestimate it either. I've heard some guys say it's all just aiming and shooting. Elevation doesn't matter that much. That's a good way to miss, wound, or question yourself every time the terrain shifts. But I've also seen guys overthink elevation so much that they freeze up. They second guess their range, their form, their pin, and talk themselves out of good shots. So here's my advice. Know your gear, practice your angles, trust your training. Make sure your rangefinder is working, and when that moment comes, bend at the waist, draw smooth, pick a hair, and follow through. Steep angle shots are part of the game. Prepare for them, and you'll turn tricky opportunities into clean, confident kills. Let's talk about one of the most overlooked skills in bow hunting elk, and that's timing your shot. Not just when to pull the trigger, but knowing exactly when to draw, when to wait, and when to let down without blowing your opportunity. You can have perfect shot placement, the perfect angle, and a bull inside 30 yards, but if your timing is off, that opportunity vanishes in a heartbeat. Elk don't just sit for long. They're moving, looking, breathing, reacting, and that means your shot window is always changing and usually pretty short. Learning how to manage that chaos, that's the skill that separates disciplined killers from guys with nothing but good stories. When do you draw? Let's start there. This is the moment most guys screw up. You're at full draw before the bull is in the opening. You're holding, waiting for him to step through. But by the time he does, you're shaking and fatigued. Your anchor's off. Your sight picture is bouncing, and the shot goes low or right and nowhere at all. Here's the rule I follow. Draw only when you know he's about to give you a shot and he won't see the movement. Sometimes that means waiting until the bull turns his head. Other times it means drawing as he walks behind a tree or into a low dip. You need to pick your window and commit. If you draw too soon, you risk fatigue. If you draw too late, you get caught. The key is anticipating his next 2 or 3 steps and using cover and body language to your advantage. And this is where experience in elk behavior pays off. Watch the ears, watch the posture. If a bull suddenly goes stiff-legged or his head is up all of a sudden, he looks alert, his ears are forward, wait, let him relax, let him move again. When to wait? Sometimes the best move is to do nothing. You've got your release clipped, you've got a lane, you've got a pin dialed, but the elk is quartering to or has a leg back, or maybe you're not sure of the distance. Maybe your heart's racing too fast and you know your breath isn't under control. Waiting doesn't feel good, but it's often the only right answer. Too many hunters rush the movement. They convince themselves they'll make it work when all the indicators are saying, not yet. A clean kill comes from a clean shot, and a clean shot comes from the discipline to wait oftentimes. If that bull is going to give you a better shot in 5 seconds, wait the 5 seconds. If he never does, you let him walk. That's how you earn real confidence, by not forcing the shot, by knowing your line, and by saving your arrow for the moment that matters most. When should you let down? This is a tough one. It's not flashy, it doesn't feel good, but letting down is often the most professional move you can make in the woods. I've had bulls inside 25 yards at full draw and I still let down. Why? Because the angle wasn't right, because I got pinned behind a tree, because the wind shifted, because that bull froze and stared straight through my soul for too long. And if you're at full draw and the shot doesn't happen, don't panic. Just let down smoothly as you can and stay ready. Don't yank it down. Don't collapse your posture. Try to stay as calm as possible. Reset your breath and prepare to draw again when the next window happens. Sometimes that moment happens seconds later. Sometimes it doesn't. But the difference is you stayed in control. And that's what consistent success looks like in elk country. Calm execution under pressure. How can you train your shot timing? This isn't something you learn only in the woods. You can practice this. Set up 3D targets. Have a buddy call shots out. Make you draw, hold, wait, let down, redraw, and shoot. Oftentimes you're going to be surprised how fatigued you are on that redraw, and it's something that you can train for. Get used to that sequence. Put your body and your mind under the same kind of pressure you'll feel in the field. Because if you've practiced letting down and redrawing when your shoulders burn and your lungs are tight, then when that bull hangs up at 30 yards, you won't panic. You'll just adapt. Let the shot come to you. I'll say this last part as clear as I can. Never force the shot. Make it earn your arrow. Draw with discipline. Wait with patience. Let down with confidence. And when the bull gives you that perfect window, execute without hesitation. Shot timing isn't about nerves. It's about clarity, seeing what's in front of you, knowing what's about to happen, and choosing when to commit. That's what separates a bow drawn in desperation from one drawn with purpose. Let's wrap this up with a truth that doesn't always get talked about in forums or YouTube comments, but every serious elk hunter knows it deep down. You can do everything right and still face a hard decision. You can train year-round, have perfect shot placement drilled into your head, and carry a flawless setup. But when that bull steps out, nothing is going to be textbook. It's steep, it's windy, it's low light, he's quartering slightly. You're kneeling behind a bush and the only clear lane is tight and low. This is real-world elk hunting. It's messy, it's dynamic, it's imperfect. And the question you have to ask yourself every single time you draw is this: will this arrow end it cleanly? It's not, can I make this shot? It's not, I might never get another chance. It's not, this is my dream bull. Just one question: will this arrow end it cleanly? Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to hit an elk. It's not even just to kill one. It's to kill one ethically, cleanly, and quickly. That's what separates the best hunters from the hobbyists. That's what builds reputation. And more importantly, that's what honors the life of the animal you're out there to pursue. Bow hunting elk is a lifetime of learning. You're never a master of this craft. You just keep refining. You start seeing elk differently, not just as targets, but as intelligent, alert, living animals that deserve precision and respect. You stop rushing shots just to say you loosed an arrow. You stop settling for good enough. And you start holding yourself to a standard that has nothing to do with likes, antler size, or how many tags you've punched. You want to become a better elk hunter? You want to become a better elk hunter? Commit to shot discipline. Commit to understanding angles. Commit to taking only shots that you've earned because those are the right ones. That's the real evolution. That's how you go from hoping to get lucky to knowing when you've got it and executing with confidence. So before you even hit the trails this season, here's what I'd recommend. Practice at all angles, elevated and downhill. Visualize your exits, not just where to aim, but how the arrow travels. Train for draw cycles. Draw, hold, let down, and repeat under stress. Shoot your broadheads at targets that simulate real elk posture and positions. Mentally rehearse every shot we talked about: broadside, quartering away, frontal, and angled. Do this consistently, and by the time you're in bow range of a bull, you won't be wondering if you're ready. You'll know you are. And if you want to take your preparation even deeper, I'd love to have you inside Team Backbone. That's where we go beyond the podcast into full hunt prep, gear deep dives, fitness strategy, and real conversations with serious backcountry hunters. We're not just talking about elk, we're building a community that lives and breathes this lifestyle. You'll get exclusive digital content, private coaching, a team-only group, and early access to new drops and giveaways. So if this episode resonated with you, if you're serious about becoming the kind of bow hunter who gets it done clean and often, head to backboneunlimited.com and step into Team Backbone. I appreciate you being here. If you got value from this, do me a favor, share it with a buddy, leave a rating, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, hunt hard, shoot smart, never settle.